Hello, everybody. Welcome to twitch.tv/the Onyx Path for Onyx PathCon 2023. This is the Realms of Pugmire panel. We are happy to be here talking about this beautiful, wonderful game. But before we dive into the festivities, I do want to remind you all that this convention is being held to support our good friends and partners over at the Bodhana Group. They have various work that they do in the tabletop space regarding mental health, and are also working on Branch Riders, which might have just wrapped up or is just wrapping up an actual play over at Dork
Yeah.
Tales. And then we'll have a panel. I think it's later today, but you can head
At
over to our
5:30.
you can head over to our Discord though and actually see the entire schedule from somebody who's not trying to remember it off the top of their head while thinking about
Or,
20 other things.
or you can look at the post-it on my desk and see that it's at 5:30.
That also works. If you look at the post-it on Dixie's desk, you will also be able to see.
Branch Riders, 5:30, and I'm appearing. That's why it says that. See, I'm very organized.
Excellent. I love it. I am for it. Well, having said that, though, now that I think I've said all the important bits that I need to share, I'm going to go ahead and pass the reins over to the esteemed Eddy Webb to please steer this chaos into a cohesive panel.
Well, I don't know about steamed, but certainly at 25 degrees Celsius, maybe it's possibly just steamed at this point.
Esteemed Eddy.
I am steamed ham. But
At
hello.
this time of year, located entirely in your kitchen.
Yes. Anyway, hello, my name is Eddy Webb. My pronouns are he, him. I am the in-house developer here at Onyx Path Publishing, and I am the owner and creator of the Realms of Pugmire, which is what we're here to talk about today. And I could sit here for an hour and talk endlessly about Pugmire, but that will bore everyone, including myself. So I've invited a bunch of my friends to come and talk about Pugmire with me. All of them have had their own different kind of contributions to Pugmire, ranging from very recent to all the way back to near the beginning. So I thought it'd be nice, fun to kind of go through both where Pugmire has been, what's happened recently, and maybe a little look into what's coming up. We'll see how that turns out. If you do have questions in the chat, feel free to drop them in. We do ask if you could either preface it with the word question in all caps or use the highlight your message feature so it's easier for us to see. And then we'll be acquiring those throughout, and we'll try to get to all of them, but some we may not answer for a variety of reasons, including NDA or just a lack of desire to do so. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about who you are and what you've worked on with Pugmire. So let's start with Dixie.
Hi, I'm Dixie Cochran. I know Eddy said he was the in-house developer at Onyx Publishing, but I'm also an in-house developer at Onyx Publishing. I guess Eddy's the most important one.
Well, my brain said the executive producer, my mouth said the in-house developer.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Well, and as we all know, Eddy owns the RPG business.
It's true.
That's true. I go in the RPG industry.
But yeah, my name's Dixie Cochran. My pronouns are she, her. I have been working on Pugmire since just around the first Kickstarter, I guess, because I had edited it at that point. And then I went on to edit Monarchies of Mal. I developed the Adventures for Curious Cats collection for Monarchies of Mal. I also wrote a chapter and a bit more on both Pirates of Pugmire and Squeaks in the Deep. And I have edited the upcoming Realms of Pugmire. So I've been kind of poking at Pugmire since it started. It's very, very exciting.
I actually just double checked. You edited early access. So you've edited the
early
very
access.
first books.
Okay, I've been on Pugmire almost since the beginning. I wasn't there when it was pitched or written, but I was there from thereafter. So, Lauren, who are you?
Hi, I'm Lauren Roy. I have written and developed a whole lot of things for Onyx Path, including stuff for World and Chronicles of Darkness, 3rd edition Exalted, Scion. I'm the developer on the upcoming Trinity Continuum Aegis, and I started, I think, with Monarchies of Mal was my first Pugmire project.
Double checking it, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah. And I forgot my pronouns are she, her.
Yes, Lauren Roy, there. Travis.
Oh, I was trying to help out, and I did not help out. I'll go
I was
over
throwing
here.
to Travis. You're throwing to Ryan. So let's start with Travis.
I'm trying to.
Excellent. My name is Travis. My pronouns are he and they. When I'm not running games online, I'm writing them. I've had the extreme pleasure and honor of working on Pirates Pugmire, Squeaks in the Deep. Did a little bit of work on the Buried Bones, and I am working on a thing that I have very cloudy brain on, and I'm not sure if it's been announced. So, for Realms.
Tome of Enemies has been announced. Yes.
Excellent. Yes, I'm working on that. So yeah, that's my Pugmire pedigree, I will say, as it is puppy related. And yeah, I will get out of the way and toss things over to Ryan.
Yeah, I'm Ryan. I'll accept any pronouns, but they, them is just more consistent. And, trying to get that out there as a visibility thing. I'm the recent addition to the Pugmire thing. I was hired to do writing on Tome of Enemies, but I was on the actual play earlier today over on Classic Age Plays. I ran an actual play during the Kickstarter for Realms of Pugmire, and I had a lot of fun contributing to the community content, Monty Corby's Acid Shanties, to support the Pirates of Pugmire thing. Release, not thing, professional, straight face. But I've been writing freelance for Onyx Path since February last year, whenever, Travis, you reached out for the Aberrant book.
Sure.
Somewhere around then.
Sounds
Somewhere
right.
around then.
Sure, that sounds good.
I'm certain I was working on an Aberrant book at that point.
As you can tell, we're all super professional here and on top of everything.
I mean, I don't know what I was working on February of this year, let alone last year. So
I have to
way
organize
better than
all
me.
of my contracts, otherwise it's just one ear out the other.
I know I was working on paper this year. It was Pugmire because I had to rewrite it because a certain company decided to change their legal contract.
Whoops.
While I was moving overseas. So yeah, I remember that. But other than that, no, you're right.
I've definitely, I was sent multiple versions to edit. I was sent one, I was working on it, and the next thing I know, it's like, stop. And I've never been told to stop the presses on editing before, essentially.
There's a scene in Superman. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Like I say, so I did, and the one I ended up editing, I think is called V3.
Yeah.
Realms of Pugmire, final, I promise this time. Like,
Yeah, no, seriously, that was a real thing for a while there.
There's a scene in Superman 3 where Superman turns evil and straightens the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and then goes back and then puts it crooked again once he's good. And it cuts away to this person who's selling like knickknacks of the Leaning Tower of Pisa that has had to alter them to be straight. And they just look over, like as Superman fixes it, he just looks over and like breaks them all with a broom, and that pretty much encapsulates my memory of that time in our industry.
That was an exciting time in our industry. Let's say. But let's actually start. If everyone's cool at the beginning, we talked a little bit about this, but Pugmire actually goes all the way back to 2015. Actually, it goes back to 2014 is when I actually wrote the first Pugmire short story, but I pitched it to Rich in 2015, and he started working on it properly then. And that led to the early access version of Pugmire that we put together as part of the Kickstarter, and actually did a POD version of, which I had forgotten until this very moment when I grabbed my stack of reference books.
and which I supposedly edited, you're telling me.
Your credits are in here as edited by Dixie Cochran, so
That
there
was
you go.
actually, 2015 was the year I started freelancing for Onyx Path under Rose Bailey, so that would have been one of my early projects too.
Yeah, I think it was because I remember Rose asking me for my commentary on your editing work, and I remember being very happy with it. It's been all downhill since then, but also this is a version because this is the picture of my Pugmire Wind's Dragon costume in it, so therefore it makes it the best version of Pugmire. No, so it started with this, and this was kind of a prototype, a proof of concept of the game, and we're just pretty happy with it. We actually put it together. It's kind of like an ash can what we did for the Kickstarter, which went really, really well. And we're happy with it. And of course, that led to the first edition of Pugmire itself, which is the big brown book that most of us are fond of today. This came out I want to say 2017. Yes, that's right.
That was my first Gen Con.
Right. Yes, that was the particular we had it there because
That was
Gen Con
Gen Con
before was when we were still trying to push the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and you got to listen to the video on loop, which is a story you should probably
Right.
tell if anybody doesn't know that story. 'Cause that's a great story.
So one of the nice things about the early Pugmire push was that a lot of people got really excited about it, and people that way more celebrity than I ever thought should be interested in my silly little dog game. And one of them was Amy Vorpal, who is a voice actor and actually an actor. Was really involved in some of the early streaming scene. Right around the time the Critical Role was just starting to kind of get some momentum, and she loved Pugmire so much she actually did a song about Pugmire on her YouTube channel. And I was like, it'd be cool if we could show this off at the convention. We were trying to sell people Pugmire. She's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Go ahead and do it. So we had a TV screen at the show, and I was playing a whole bunch of videos, a lot of our crowdfunding videos and promotional videos and whatnot in a loop. So I had thought this through at the time, but then of course it would come back around like every 20, 30 minutes and you hear the same song over and over and over and over and over to the point where certain colleagues would stare me dead in the eyes and sing that song with hatred.
Pugmire. Pugmire.
And it was such a cute song, but it became more like a dirge as the weekend went on.
Yeah. The actual song is adorable, but after you've heard it like 43 times in a one shift, you're like I think it was Mike Hollywood who changed it to Pugmire, where we're going, we don't need eyes.
Yes, that was my call.
And it just became like it's such a cute song and it's so adorable, and it just got. Like, I mean, just imagine listening to Baby Shark 58 times in a row. Like, it's a cute song for 5 seconds. And after a while, you're just like.
Right, exactly.
But like, to this day, colleagues will do that. Like, I sing that song occasionally. It gets stuck in my head still.
It does. It's very catchy.
Yeah.
This version of Pugmire was based on the Open Game License. So it is a modified version of D&D 5th edition. And that was done for very kind of lots of different reasons. I won't kind of encapsulate them unless someone really is curious about them. I can. But up to that point, it was largely me. I had a couple of people help me out in the writing of specific kind of sections. Of course, Rich handled the art direction with Mike Chaney, Dixie handled the editing, but mostly it was me actually writing a lot of the manuscript, putting it together, doing the direction of it. Then we did some supplements for that, and I realized at that point in time that I needed some help on those. So, for example, I did do the Jumpstart, which was Vincent's Tomb. But again, I wrote that myself. But I did ask my friend James Lauder, who worked at TSR in the fiction division there, to edit the Tales of Good Dogs, which was the fiction anthology. And he got some surprisingly cool people to work on that, and including, again, some TSR alums, and also some people just not only in the game industry, but even outside the game industry, to write some really great short story fiction.
Isn't that the book where Joshua Deitch made me cry with my own 2 eyes?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So, when Eddie says edited, he means as a developmental editor, which is a different thing from what I do, which is copy editing. So technically, so that's why I also worked on that book, but in a very different capacity than James, who actually put it all together, got all the writers.
Right.
Editor means like 8 different things in different industries.
Right. Editor's equivalent to developer in our terms. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that regard.
It's a lot. It can be confusing.
Indeed. Again, so I brought more people on. I realized on the next game, I wanted to do a parallel core rulebook to Pugmire for cats, and that led to Monarchies of Mao. And while I was the developer on that, I realized that I was going to need some help to kind of pull it together. So this is the first book that really had what we call a traditional development path. We generally do an Onyx path where we hire a team to work on it. And so that's kind of where Lauren comes into our story a bit more. So how much do you remember about working on Monarchies of Mao?
It was a bit of I was excited because I think I want to say it was Neil who was like, hey, Eddie might be looking for some writers on one of the Pugmire books, and I think it was like I didn't see the message for 6 hours. And I was like, you have my claws. and he was like, well, I'm sorry, it's too late. And I was like, oh, and he said, I already gave your name to Eddy. And I was like, oh.
That does sound like a Neil.
Yeah.
Oh, Neil.
And, so I was super excited about it, and it was cool to be kind of on that, in that aspect of this was something that was really new, and it was a new system to me and a new world to me. And I'm a giant cat person, so it was a lot of fun to kind of help.
Every book that you're on, when I go to edit, like one of the things in the credits is we always thank our pets. That's something that Eddy's always done,
Yeah.
and I think it's very cool. And I can always it's always funny when Lauren's on a book because there's like 6 or 7 names that are all for Lauren. 'Cause you have a few cats
I have 3 right now.
right now.
I'm surprised there isn't one right here, but she's over on the heating pad.
I actually do have one right.
It's like a
here.
sunbeam right there and everything, you know?
Yeah, she used to fit in the window ledge, and then she stopped being a kitten, so we had to
Expand to the adult cat size. Awesome. And so that again, I really had a great time working on Monarchies of Mao. I just remember that one because that was the time I was developing that when I had moved to Ireland and then had to move back. So that's stuck in my head. So I remember I have very specific memories in 2017 of working on that book when I was in Ireland. But at that point, I feel like I gotten pretty confident in where the game was going. And so I actually started to let other developers work on the game itself and develop the books. And one of those was Adventures of Curious Cats, which Dixie helped develop. So Dixie, do you want to talk about how terrifying that was for you?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first developmental project where I was kind of like, I was all by myself because obviously I was working with Eddy.
Right.
But I was the developer of that book. It was mostly scary because like it's an adventure collection. I did want to do adventures for levels 1, 3, and 5. That was kind of my desire there. But one of the people whose names you had given me was Dennis Detweiler of the Green fame. And I was kind of like, I have to develop, like, I don't mind developing like people I know a little bit. Like I think my other 2 writers on that were Alyssa Rich and Josh Heath.
Yeah.
And so, they're Onyx Path folks. I kind of, whatever. And then I've got Dennis Detweiler, who wrote a truly creepy adventure that I had to tone it down a tad. It was a little far into the Celtic Green, but only a little bit, because there is a lot of room for creepiness in Pugmire, and especially in Monarchies when you get into some of these other situations that aren't like happening like in the kingdoms.
Right.
But yeah, it was really fun, partially I think because one of the things that I got to experience with that was the ideas portion of working on a Pugmire book, where people are thinking about every thing from our current era they could possibly put into the future and what it would look like. The last adventure in that book takes place around kind of an abandoned, buried amusement park. And at first, Alyssa was looking at things like, Disney World, which, yeah, of course, that would be interesting to find a giant plastic castle, right? But it was a little too obvious, so we looked instead towards like Defunct Land style, like crappy, abandoned already amusement parks. And that was just a really cool place to set anything. I thought, I was like, that's so interesting, because there's going to be some plastic doodads left over because you go to an amusement park and you win plastic doodads. And there's probably going to be some tracks, but no one's going to understand what this could possibly be for. The tracks don't go anywhere. Like,
it just goes in a weird loop. It's weird.
Yeah. So yeah, like getting to kind of crack that egg of the like back portion of Pugmire is very fun. Because I've had like minor complaints over the years that a lot of people use tablets and smartphones as like MacGuffins. And I'm like encourage people to think more futuristic is also really interesting. I've been doing that a lot with my players too, and be like more futuristic, because like if you think about the level of technology that humans had when they left, it's probably Mass Effect, Star Trek. That's kind of where I try to throw people.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a really fun part of the process that I hadn't gotten to do before.
Yeah, totally. And for me, it was certainly nice to work with someone else because, again, new ideas are coming in I hadn't necessarily thought of. And we got in some good conversations, things that I had kind of internalized but never spoken aloud to other human being. Having conversations with folks like Dixie really helped me to kind of, nail them down and make them firm in my head. And so that process, far from feeling like I had lost control or any way of the property, instead, I actually felt like I solidified and got my grounding better as a result from doing that. And then I had originally planned to do something else, but we decided that we wanted to do something more like an adventure source book after Monarchies of Mao. So after some discussion, we decided to do Pirates of Pugmire. And I believe this is where Travis enters the scene officially, working on Pirates, although Dixie also worked on this book as well. So what was y'all's experience working on Pirates of Pugmire, and how does it differ from some of the other stuff you've worked on?
I mean, I was just scared because I was still fairly new to writing. I have a degree in English. Like I've written my whole life, but I hadn't done much of it for money, I guess. I hadn't done professional writing. And I was still fairly new. And I kind of poked at Eddy, and I was like, I'd like to write Pugmire if I can, maybe. But I don't know mechanics. I'm bad at mechanics. And he's like, here's character creation.
Right.
So you're gonna have to write some mechanics. And I was like, oh, okay. And also I wrote a bunch of the treasures, not all of them, I don't think, but like a chunk of them. But I actually really had a great time once I get into it. Like you start researching like reptiles, which we should have called them from the beginning and didn't because we're very silly people. And looking up different kinds of birds and what they do and what they look like, so I can make the characters make sense as birds but also as people. One thing I liked about working on that and Squeaks, which we'll get into later, was getting to kind of like softly retcon some things that might have gotten said in the first Pugmire book, just because I don't think you were thinking about this scope at that point of like how many kinds of people we were going to introduce. But that was really fun. And also the fact that Eddy did let me get my laser pointer in, and I think I am the writer who you let get a laser pointer in, and I'm very happy
because some of the people tried to do it, and they were not interesting takes, and you had an interesting take on it.
Yeah. So there is a laser pointer artifact in that is very fun, and I like it, and I use it in my games all the time.
Right.
But yeah, no.
How about you, Travis?
It was scary, but then fun.
Oh, sorry.
I concur with Dixie though for different reasons. I was terrified. I don't know if I ever even told you this, Eddy. I'm terrified of water. I don't like boats. Never been on them. When I was
the best book for you.
Yeah, horrified of it, and don't have a whole lot of nautical knowledge. I have more now as a result of the research. But it was interesting to try to. A lot of the design work I did, if memory serves properly, was centered around mostly how the boats function and how travel and combat on the sea all work. And coming up with the ideas of like the way the different crew positions would function in order to make sure that everybody got to have kind of a place at the table. Because I remember we had a conversation, and I think we talked a little bit about a certain other game that shall not be named, where like you have deckers who could often wind up like everybody go out and watch a movie because it's the decker's turn, and we wanted to avoid
what
that.
game could that possibly be?
And
Anima, obviously Anima.
We specifically wanted to avoid that in the design, and I think we really hit the mark on that. But it was a little intimidating to try to just wrestle with that, coming from a place of just utter ignorance about how boats worked. Like I knew they floated, and I didn't want to be on them. That was
I can't believe that you did all that being aquaphobic. That's so funny. I had no idea.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Terribly. I've gotten better a little bit about it, but it's bad. Yeah.
So around this time also, one of the things that I always kind of wanted to do was to do some kind of community content program with Pugmire. I wanted to give people a chance to semi-officially contribute to the game, because I feel like when a game is relatively open, you can find the right balance of making sure that, we're still getting all the creatives paid and whatnot, and make sure that the company's making enough of a profit to see the game is viable, but also making sure that people have a way to contribute to it. I think that's really great. And after seeing how some of the community content programs on Drive Through RPG worked, we did Canis Minor. And this is where Travis and Ryan also kind of enter the stage. So maybe if you both talk a little bit about, particularly, I think it's Morty Corgi you both worked on, is that right?
Yes. Ryan, did you work on the first Morty Corgi?
No, it was just Acid Chanters I worked on.
Okay, yeah. So the first Morty Corgi, it was, we got together, I don't know, 10 creators, something like that. And everybody, we wanted to try to expand every aspect of the game. So we wanted to touch on every little thing. And I, because I'm a 5-year-old and love punny stuff, I wanted to have it all be framed through this wizard named Morty Corgi. For no apparent reason and no nod to existing wizard properties. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to put together and to be able to kind of play around in both design spaces and perhaps pun spaces that might not make it into an official product, but still I think have legs, or in this case paws. And it worked out pretty well. And so well, in fact, we did a sequel when Pirates came out, which was Acid Shanties, which Ryan worked on. And that one I largely just acted as a coordinator on. So I think Ryan could talk a little bit more about the actual experience of working on that book.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so that was, I think, the first time I'd done non-adventure community content, because for context for people who are watching, who might not know, I run a show usually every alternate Tuesday on the Onyx Path channel where I just write community content and discuss design process with the Twitch audience. And I'd done that for Scion. And I think at that point I'd started a Chronicles of Darkness one, but obviously that's not going to fit right into the kind of book that Travis was coordinating. So it was learn a new system and then a whole bunch of character options, including families, callings. There was something else I contributed, but it was definitely a good taster of what I might have to do if I ever did end up writing professionally freelance. Because at that point I was still kind of, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Testing out the waters with my own stuff. And then, the Acid Chantis happened and I had such a blast on that. I was like, no, this is definitely something I want to pursue further. Which then when you emailed me about Term Venomous Eddy, I was like, yes, more Pugmire in my life.
I feel like everybody who works on it or like gets involved with it is like, I need more. I love this game so much. This game is so good.
Well, there definitely seems to be a common thread of both excitement and fear, which I'm not sure how to feel about.
I think it's fine to get it right, Eddy. Like, I think like you struck such a tone in the first book where it's cute, but it's also nostalgic and it's also a little scary and it's got all these like levels of depth to it. I'm just gonna compliment your work for the next couple minutes here. But like there's so much going on in the first book that I think a lot of folks as a surface read maybe don't quite see. But once you actually like dig into it, I mean, I still describe the Church of Man as like being driven by the feeling of a dog waiting for his master to come home, which everyone knows that. Everyone's seen that Futurama episode. It's sad. It's sad and it makes you cry. And I love that. Like there's so much going on. And I know that you and I have talked at length and we talked on the podcast about like setting secrets and what things actually are. And you have an answer for a lot of it, which is really cool. And writing, knowing the answer, but not giving people the answer is also very fun. So like, there's just a lot going on with it that I don't feel with a lot of other things I write, because generally you're just trying to straightforwardly present the information. And there's a really specific tone in Pugmire that I don't get to write as often for other things. So yeah, I just think it's cool.
I like that sense of playful mystery where there might maybe an answer, but it's not needed at all. It's just there.
Yeah.
Well, and
I
go ahead.
certainly like to put. No, I was just gonna say. I just mentioned that I certainly like to put stuff in there, and I've had people go, "Why is this here?" It's like,
Well, and one thing I just want to say to kind of piggyback too off of what Dixie was saying about the various different layers and levels of Pugmire, those are all, and I really think that all of the Pugmire books do a very good job of presenting it just as facts of the world without hanging too big of a lantern on it. But all of those things are knobs you can dial to decide how you want your Pugmire experience to be. You can have a very funny Pugmire experience. You can have a very cutesy Pugmire experience. You can have a very terrifying Pugmire experience. You can have one that's a tearjerker. You know, we ran an actual play a while ago that was 3 episodes of hilarity, and the 4th one was just absolute sadness because the main character was trying to find a way to open a magical portal to a farm upstate. You know, and like everybody was laughing about it till they got to the point where he was going to open the portal. You know?
it's like, wait, no, maybe you shouldn't. The mystical farm upstate.
Yeah, so you can tweak those knobs and really customize the experience that you want to have at the table, and it's very cool. And it doesn't require any like system alteration to do that. It's all just in the setting.
Absolutely. After that we did do Squeaks the Deep, which is our rodents, mice, mouse, and rats supplement. And for a lot of financial reasons, that ended up being supplement rather than a core rulebook like I had originally envisioned. It made a lot of sense to go that way. And I ultimately am extremely happy with how the book came out. Several people on here put on that book as well. But one thing that I realized after doing that was that it was time, I felt, for a new edition. At that point, when I started thinking about it, it had been 7 years since from my first pitch the game to now. So it's like by the time the book comes out, it's going to be close to a decade between editions. And so that felt like a right time to do the new edition, which is Realms of Pugmire. And that went out to crowdfunding earlier this year. I had already been inclined to kind of start moving it even further away from its D&D base, because one of the things I learned through selling all of these books was that so many people were like, oh, it's D&D, and then they apply their D&D assumptions directly to it, and they didn't always work. It's like having buying pieces for a car model that's not quite the same scale. And so it's like it fits kind of if you jam it in hard enough, but it's not really how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And so when there was some, let's say, controversy around the open game license earlier this year, I decided to go ahead and proactively kind of push even a little further away things that I already thought I wanted to do, but I had hesitated on because I was worried that that kind of cross compatibility was going to be a little more needed. And then I realized, I can still do some more changes and then just make a list of a conversion document to kind of ease that along. So that combined with, I had been seeing some enthusiasm for Pugmire in other areas. This is one of the things that I want to show that I think many people have seen both on this panel or anywhere. But we have actually made some partnerships with a couple of translators, which I'm really excited about.
Yay.
For example, this is from New Order. I'm actually gonna turn my thing off so you can see my backgrounds for a bit here. So yeah, very good office. But this is the from New Order. This is the Portuguese version of Pugmire, which you see looks very much like the original Pugmire, except for there's some additional logos on there, and of course back. I doubt you can read that, but that it's written in Portuguese. And then of course also our friends at Group SNE came up with the Japanese version of Pugmire, which is pretty different. It's actually softback as opposed to hardback. There's this little kind of slipcover thing, and even the inside there's like little kind of additional little flippy bits. And they even asked me if they could do an afterword about their experiences translating Pugmire. So there's additional afterword in the Japanese Pugmire, which is nice anywhere else. we also had a card game called Fetch Quest. Some other there's an interactive audio drama. I wrote a interactive novel. So I mean, there's lots of other things in Pugmire, but that's kind of all blended together, and more the inventive part. I wanted to do a new edition, and part of that was to kind of start from a better foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads us to now. And if you've backed the Kickstarter in January, first of all, thank you so much. That means a ton to me. So you've already seen a lot of the changes, and there's going to be more because we've got a ton of feedback since then that I've been able to kind of reincorporate, because normally we don't do the kind of playtesting after a Kickstarter, but given the quick nature in which I had to rewrite the manuscript, I felt like it was worthwhile to kind of make sure we're continuing to polish and iterate that as we're leading up to it. But also, if you haven't, certainly you can go to Back Your Kit and pre-order it. And I believe you get access to the current, not the current, as in like the January version of the manuscript, so you can see kind of what everybody else is seeing at the moment. But also, there are some additional things on the horizon that I want to talk about, and then we can go into questions because I see a bunch of questions in chat.
Yeah.
The first, as we kind of talked about, is the next book is going to be a manual of monsters, if you will. It is currently tentatively called Tome of Enemies. It is going to have a different name. We've actually did some brainstorming, and I have a lot of good ideas. Really, the only reason why I haven't changed it is because there's so many good ones. I'm trying to narrow it down to like 3 or 4 that I really like, but I need to finally pick one and go with it. So Tome of Enemies is the working title, but basically this is just kind of a big bunch of monsters. I hired a bunch of people to write not only brand new antagonists for Pugmire, but also to convert a large chunk of monsters that have been published in first edition, but were not actually in the core rulebook. And Ryan and Travis did a lot of that work. So let me talk a little bit about that. I haven't read your red lines yet, so feel free to be honest, recognizing that things may change. But
You want to go first, Ryan?
No, by all means.
Oh, hello, Dark Tales is rating us.
Hello, Dark Tales. They just came over from playing Branch Riders, so thank you all for hanging out.
Hello, Branch Rider. Yay.
Yeah, so yes, working on Tome of Enemies has been very interesting because it's given me, like I had the privilege of having some early feedback and discussions with Eddy about kind of how what ultimately became Onyx 20 was going to come together. So I already had some insight into that, and there are obviously some other ideas that I've been toying with for the system itself. So being able to go through and have the opportunity to revisit these monsters as they were presented in the first edition and translate them over into this new edition, which, if I can just gush for a moment, Eddy, about the sleekness of the design of enemies and the way that they're built to allow the guide to create manageable and interesting challenges for the players. That whole design dovetailed together really well, so it made doing those conversions really fun.
Oh, good. That was my goal.
Yeah, I am very much excited to see how these hit the audience when they get out in front of people, because they've been a riot to work on. And I've been able to work on a couple of additional, aside from conversion creatures, there's a couple that are new to the setting that have also been quite a treat. But I don't want to get into too many spoilers about that, because we're not sure.
Especially if I'm like, nope,
Right.
nope, we're not doing
Right,
that.
because Eddy might be like, you made a what now? So how about you, Ryan? What thoughts do you have?
Yeah, no, it was just again the encounter maths, if you prefer, which I do. It's so good. Just as someone who does a lot of homebrew for loads of systems, D20 included, like it's just so nice to have something that feels fair and consistent. But yeah, because as with Travis, I converted a bunch of old material and made some new ones. Obviously, my new ones, it's fine. Like I made them. I'm not terribly attached to them. If they get changed a lot through red lines, so be it. But with the converted material, I'm like, oh god, this is not only has someone worked on this, but countless tables around the world could have fond memories of this monster.
Right.
Do I really want to mess this up in a system that is functionally new to everyone who's working on it, and where the maths behind everything is different enough that sometimes it will require a CR change from either up or down, and just making sure everything was balanced. But it was a lot of fun just to convert the old material and look at like where it was and where it's at now.
I still firmly believe that CR is completely arbitrary and nobody actually knows what it means.
I agree.
I'm so bad at like figuring out encounters. I just fudge numbers with my group all the time. I'm like, oh, this thing has this many hit points. That's too many.
Yeah, and that was honestly one of the big things that I did even before the OGL stuff beginning of this year. That was something I definitely wanted to do. Was like I literally just threw the math out and started from scratch and redid all the math on the monsters because I was so frustrated with it. Because you're right, CR is just magic. It doesn't make sense.
Also, like for a group of what size? Like that's like it's. I've never had anybody like codify it for me. Like, okay.
I actually did find there's a line buried in the DMG that does say that CR is supposed to be equivalent to the same level of group of 4.
I don't even have a DMG. So
See, that's the thing.
In Xanathars, there's like a whole 2-page spread dedicated to tables of this is the correct CR for a party of this size, solo or group. They did listen, just in a non-useful source. Well, it's useful, but it's supplemental. It's not the core source.
Right. That stuff should be like in the new printing of a DMG or something.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I know. I've learned something about D&D today.
See, there you go.
Also, sorry, I said CR. I meant OL.
Well, yeah. I changed it to to opponent level and character level. So that way, literally, a level 1 monster goes up against a level 1 character. Very easy. It's trying to make it a lot cleaner and easier to understand these things.
I like it.
But I've also announced I at least mentioned that I want to do a lot of the books. One of the other reasons I want to do this new edition is that the first issue was very much book to book, right? We would do a book, we'd get some stretch goals out of it, then we'd think about the next book, stretch goals out of it, and it was very serialized. And there was a vague plan, but I didn't really design the first book with the 4th book in mind, right? This edition was very much, I planned out a whole set of books, and originally it was 7. The numbers changed a bit since then, but I had a whole plan for how I wanted to roll the thing out. And one of the things I talked with Onyx Path about was, are we committed to this whole plan? And actually, to be clear, Onyx Path, Rich came to me and said, let's talk about a plan first. So, I mean, it wasn't like I was arguing and defending for it. Rich was very eager to make sure there was an actual game line plan going into this new edition. So that was something we were all very eager about. And initially I had talked about, and this is now we're moving to brand new stuff that's never been mentioned anywhere, was I was going to have a cat player's guide and a rodent player's guide. And then there was going to be a Monarchies of Mal-ish new edition book that was going to be a campaign setting with birds in it. And then a Squeaks in the Deep 2nd edition-ish book that was going to have rodents or something else in it. I have since changed my mind on that. Part of it was I talked a lot with Rose Bailey, who had some very strong thoughts about it, and get some really good advice. So what's going to happen is that there's not going to be a cat or rodent player's guide anymore. Instead, that material is going to be folded into those 2 books. So there's going to be a Monarchies of Mao-ish, but it's going to have a new title because I want to make sure that's super clear that it's not just a conversion of that material, but it's going to be an expansion of it, but it will have cat character creation rules in it, and also expanded information about the monarchies, and also a short adventure path inside of all of that. And that's kind of the goal of that book. And as of 2 days ago, Lauren has tentatively agreed to help be the developer on that. So we super early days, like we're still working the outline. So I mean, I can't say much beyond that. But this is kind of my hopeful plan going forward, is that we will have, after a book has been crowdfunded, the next book will move underway, and then we'll start planning for the third book. So that way, in the near future, we will be crowdfunding the next Pugmire book. Monarchies will be, or whatever we're calling it, will be underway, and then the book after that will be in development. So that way, there's a nice steady pace of Pugmire material going forward, rather than there's crowdfunding, we go through all of that, then we start the next crowdfunding, which means that there's sometimes odd gaps between books. So this will be a steadier pace. We don't want to go too fast because we want to make sure that we're not having a whole bunch of books sitting at like art or editing or whatever, just waiting. But also we don't want to go too slow. So we're going to see how this kind of cadence and structure works. So, and for context, we started Realms of Pugmire, early 2021, Lauren? Is that right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a couple of years since we started this process. So, I mean, it's going to be basically every roughly 6 months, we'll have another book, hopefully starting to move ahead. So that's kind of the rough plan. We'll see how that goes. But that's kind of the past, present, and future of Pugmire that I can talk about for now. So I know we have some questions. You want to start kind of getting through them?
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes left, so we have to rapid fire some of these questions.
Sure.
So the first question of today was, what is your favorite Pugmire antagonists?
I'll let everybody else answer that question.
Gosh, I mean, we talked about it in last night's panel. Like, you gotta love the whatever plastic baby head thing is called from Squeaks, the Gaga Mama.
Mm-hmm.
The first time you broke that out in actual play, when I hadn't read it yet because the book wasn't out yet, I was like, "What the crap?" And it was horrifying. And I think that was when I was playing my little mouse who just like runs into danger.
Right.
And he ran into a room and there was just baby heads talking to me. And I was
I'm gonna
like,
get this. No, I'm not gonna get
like
this.
I'm leaving.
Nope. But the rest of y'all.
Some of the weirder monsters are fun, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Smilodon Shadow,
Yeah.
in Monarchies, which is like that sort of creepy, don't know exactly what it is, but it's kind of a revenge ghost, and it can take different shapes. I love that sort of ominous, out of the corner of your eye, you don't know exactly what it is feel that and also that it's maybe targets some cats that it wants to get back at.
It plays a big part in Dennis Detweiler's adventure too.
Ooh, nice.
So.
Oh, nice. Travis, Ryan, do either of you have some bird ones?
After you, Ryan, please.
I mean, the Unseen are a classic, obviously, because they can be anything and they can fit the needs of the story or be complete left field ideas. But when I was, obviously, I'm not going to mention exactly what, but when I was converting an older monster, it's just, I was stuck with like just the inherent tragedy of everything that's been left behind, and how you can make the players go, this is a really casual, chill game, and then we touched on how you can get horror and any genre out of it, but there's that disconnect of the player being like, I completely understand how this remnant of mankind that's artificial feels, and I can sympathize with it. But then they've got the character who, even less in D&D, you've got like arcane archmages, whatever, who can understand a lot of difficult concepts, but these are not that level of society. It's medieval fantasy society. It's like they have no idea how to even start with these concepts, and just that merging of player knowledge and character knowledge and how people can deal with that is just fascinating. Obviously, extremely rewarding from a storytelling perspective.
Awesome, Travis.
Agreed completely. I'm a little torn because I really love the Stormcaller that appears in Pirates Pugmire. It's a very interesting take on the unseen, and a very nice way to drop chaos kind of in the middle of any seafaring adventure. So that's always very interesting to me, and I love the dragon from Squeaks in the Deep. I really like that idea. It's nice. It was to me, it's a very good example of kind of the dovetail between fantasy with the meta sci-fi underpinning, I guess. The dragon really does that nicely.
Awesome.
What are people's favorite Squeaks plot hooks? And the person did say, and why is it the fairy rat? But it doesn't have to be that.
But the fairy rat is really great. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't actually remember the fairy rat because I don't remember anything I read. So, my favorite is just the shifting nature of the underneath. Personally, I like the fact that you can be in a cave and then walk through an opening, and you're in like a building from modern times, like our current times, and then you're in a castle, and like it's like anything can be down there. And one of my favorite plot hooks to do with that is to get people to try to go rescue someone who went to explore the underneath and hasn't been seen for a while,
Right.
But they could be fine, just underground somewhere.
Yeah. Anybody else? I mean, not all of y'all maybe worked on or read Squeaks, but
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, in terms of specific plot hooks, I don't have any grand recollection of Squeaks of ones that leap out at me, but I really worked mainly on psionics themselves. Having said that, the psionics themselves, I think, offer some very cool plot opportunity. One of the things that Eddie and I talked about very early on was the tell, the idea that, you're not going to use these powers necessarily quietly. There's always going to be some sort of like an effect to it, and different ways that you can customize that to again interact with those kind of dials and knobs I was talking about before. About, do we want it to be cute? Do we want it to be terrifying?
right.
That I think that's a very cool aspect of Squeaks.
One of my players right now is on a quest to find out what his tell is because it smells like waffles with applesauce and peanut butter, and they haven't discovered cinnamon yet, so he doesn't know what applesauce smells like. So he's figured out that it's like a fried bread and it's peanuts, and past that, he's like on this quest to try to figure out what the hell his tell is.
That's
And
amazing.
it's kind of fun.
Love it.
Nice. If there nothing else, we'll go to the next question then.
Yeah, so it's probably more for Eddie, but anybody, of course, can have an opinion. With the switch from OGL based to Onyx 20, were there any rule innovations that you were extra happy about or proud of?
I feel like honestly the big one is the one we talked about, which is that just rebuilding the monster math from scratch.
They did the math.
I know every time I have to do that. But I was really happy with that. Also, there's lots of little things that like most people are going to kind of go, okay, that's weird, but all right, because it's not D&D. I don't know why you changed that. But like I have actually lots of either design or math reasons why it makes more sense. Like, for example, I got in a long tirade on Discord a while back about why your tests, which used to be saving throws, your preferred ones are now you roll with advantage as opposed to having a flat bonus, because rogue advantage is actually better at low levels and less useful at higher levels. So it actually makes your saving throws even out when you need them less and makes them more useful when you need them more. And there's a whole reason behind it, but everyone's like, oh, but I'm used to doing it with the +2. Why don't you use the +2?
I think for me, just because it was something that I pushed for, is spell points. I dislike spell slots as a concept. I just like it doesn't. Every spell should have a cost, and you should have a number of points, and you spend those points, and like it just makes sense to me. Like this spell costs 2 points, I have 7, as opposed to being like, oh, I have to spend a level 1 spell slot on this, level 2 spell slot. Like it makes sense when you're used to it, obviously.
Right.
But like if you come at it thinking about it as if you had not known it most of your life, like I have, it's kind of silly. Like.
And also, if you play video games, it's like mana points, right?
Exactly. Like, okay, I've got 7 of these. This one costs 2. This one costs 1. This one costs 3. I can add an extra point to make it more powerful. Like, it's something that I've seen in a lot of other games more recently, probably because of video games. And I just think it makes sense rather than going with the kind of old school spell slot thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say that the old school spell slots are like almost anti-intuitive.
Right.
You know them because of the weight of history, not because they make sense. But however, though, speaking of resurrecting things that at least feel like they're coming from earlier editions of fantasy role-playing games, I'm really jazzed about the way morale works in Realms. That was a really amazing design that you did there, Eddie. It's dope.
Awesome. And Ryan, you mentioned one in our actual play, actually, didn't you?
Yeah, during the Kickstarter, I ran an actual play using the rules as they were, then, and that was a lot of fun. But then when when you provided updates rules for the writing work, it's just I think I mentioned this during the actual play, but it might have been like to my players after the game. But the fact that everything is so simple now, and you have thrown out a lot of the chaff associated with D20 systems. One, obviously, it makes our jobs easier as a writer.
Right.
Not only to just stick to the game language and mechanics terms, but also to make new stuff, but also because it's friendlier. People are going to do community content and homebrew and explore the game and grow it that way.
Absolutely. Awesome. Do you have time for one or two more questions, I think?
Yeah, a couple more. Someone did ask if we could learn about bunnies in case you want to just like have your head explode about
Squeak's Companion is coming out. We've had some delays that are unrelated to any of us, just things happen to people. Squeak's Companion is still coming out and has all the information on bunnies. And yes, at some point in the future, I don't know exactly when, we will have updated versions of that in the second edition as well. So
we were asked some timing things and we don't answer those questions, so I'm skipping them.
Right.
We don't know when things are coming out. They come out when they come out.
Yeah, they come out when they come out.
Onyx Path releases are like Gandalf. They arrive precisely when they mean to.
Right.
They're ready, dang it.
Well, past that, that's actually most of it.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm happy.
There we go.
I think that
Then I will say to kind of wrap things up is that if you just can't wait, if you really want to play Pugmire now, you have a couple of options. One is, as I mentioned, you can go to the backer kit if you want the current latest rule set. And that will get you, I'm reasonably sure, not 100% sure, but I'm reasonably sure that will give you access to the manuscript as was presented during the Kickstarter, so you can play with those rules if you want to. However, if you want the first edition, which again, there will be compatibility rules for second edition, so your stuff does not become invalid, you can convert it to second edition. We are having sales right now. There's some big sales for all of Onyx Path stuff on DriveThruRPG right now. And also there's a sale on Indie Press Revolution of a lot of our stuff as well, if you want physical books that come into the stores. So all of our offset print runs, a lot of stuff is on sale there as well. So check out either DriveThruRPG if you're looking for PDF and print on demand, or if you're looking for offset quality printing, then that is going to be at Indie Press Revolution. So you get that stuff, check it out. I don't know what exactly is on sale, but there's lots of cool stuff that is definitely on sale.
A lot of the stuff at IPR are the deluxes that we do through Kickstarters.
Okay.
So if people missed, I know there's some Exalted ones on there. I think Lunar's maybe Dragon Blooded. There's, I think, Changeling, the Dreaming 20.
I just clicked on the link to double check. And it has like Legend Lore, Dragon Blooded. Yep. You're right. There's a lot of Exalted stuff, a lot of World stuff. The Pugmire guide screen is on there if you're still looking for that. And I believe Monarchies of Mal, I'm waiting for the next page to load. I believe Monarchies of Mal, no, it is not.
I think it's
so I
sold out.
lied.
Yeah.
Yeah, but D2C is on sale. So.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on there. And for people that always are sad that like, oh, I missed the leather bound version, like go see if it's there, because some of them are.
Absolutely. If you just want to stay in touch on Realms of Pugmire, obviously there's realmspugmire.com, where I try to update whenever we have a major announcement or change, but also has links to all the stuff that's available, including non-Onyx Path stuff. Not everything but Realm Pugmire comes out from Onyx Path. Sometimes I have other promotional projects. One of them, a small one, but I'm happy about, is coming out soon, but I have commissioned an official Pugmire theme song, which I'll be releasing at some point in the near future. I got a professional composer to work on that. I'm very excited about that. And also the Onyx Path Discord is kind of where I hang out these days. We also have some forums at Onyx Path, forum.onyxpath.com. I do check that once in a while, but honestly, I live in Discord these days because social media scares me. So those are the best places to find stuff. But speaking of social media, since we're getting near the end, where can people find you if they want to ask you when their favorite animal is going to be in the game? Let's start with Travis.
You can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet as Travis Legge, Legge, except for on Twitch, where I am Plastic Age Plays. I do hang around on the Onyx Path Discord. Sometimes I make it over to the forums, but it's rare these days. So yeah, the Discord is probably the best place to find me for all things Onyx Path.
Awesome. Ryan?
Yeah, I'm common raid bubbles pretty much everywhere online, I think. The major places anyway. Don't ask me about when your favorite animal's going to pick Pugmire because I don't know. And I will, depending on how puckish I'm feeling, I may give you an erroneous answer with an asterisk linking to very small fine print that I'm not, officially announcing this or anything.
And then I'll retweet it everywhere. Right. Lauren.
I'm Falconess pretty much everywhere, ESSE. I think except for Instagram where someone else snagged it first. How dare they? Right?
Jerk.
Rude.
Dixie.
Yeah, you can find me at Dixie Cyanide pretty much everywhere. Also, in half an hour, we're going to be doing the What's Up with Onyx Path panel right here. That's always a fun one. And then I am actually playing Realms of Pugmire tonight at 8:30 on Dork Tales if you want to see it in action, all the stuff we just talked about.
Yes, if you didn't catch it this morning where I ran with our European friends, then the American time zone will be running their own version of it. You can find me at my work at Pugsteady. That's Pugstady. My website is pugsteady.com. You can find me on Twitter and dice.camp at Pugsteady. You can find me most every Friday on the Onyx Pathcast, where this kind of nonsense is even less structured, but we do talk about Onyx Path games most of the time on there with Dixie as well as our colleagues Matthew and Danielle. You can find all of our stuff at theonyxpath.com. Hope you're having a great time this weekend. Please, if you have a chance, consider donating to the Madonna group or running or playing in one of the games we have at Start Playing Games this weekend, because a portion of that money does go to our charity for this weekend, which is Madonna. I appreciate y'all hanging out. So I appreciate my panelists for coming and talking about the game. I'm so glad to see that my silly little dog game has touched so many people. That always warms my heart every single time. And I look forward to working with all of you on future projects in the future. And looking forward to all of you fans in the chat enjoying the games that are coming out in the future. So that's it. See you all next time. And I'll see you in half an hour at What's Up.
Thank you all so much. Hang out. We're going to raid over to Rolling Nomads where they are playing some Scion. So please stick around and then be back here in a half hour for What's Up with Onyx Path.
Bye-bye.